Imagine this. In 1492, 3 small ships and 90 sailors, led by Christopher Columbus, forever changed the world. But what if I told you that 87 years before that, a massive fleet of over 200 giant ships and 27,000 men had already sailed across the entire Indian Ocean? Would you believe it? This fleet, from Ming Dynasty China, possessed the most advanced naval technology and the largest ships on the planet. They had the power, the time, and the opportunity to paint the entire map red. But they didn't. No colonies, no conquest, no overseas territories. Why? The answer reveals a civilizational logic completely different from the Western age of discovery we're all familiar with. This isn't science fiction. This is real history, from 600 years ago. To understand this fleet, we must first understand its commander, Zheng He. He was a Muslim eunuch. Yes, you heard that right. A eunuch, a castrated man who served in the imperial court. So why would a Chinese emperor appoint a eunuch as his grand admiral? Why trust him with such immense power? Their shared history holds the key. Let's rewind to 14th century China. The Ming dynasty's founding emperor, Zhu Yuanzhang, had overthrown the Yuan dynasty, the empire established by Genghis Khan. Zheng He was a descendant of a noble Yuan family. During the war against the Ming army, his father was killed in battle. The young Zheng He was captured, castrated, sent to the palace, and assigned to the emperor's 4th son, Zhu Di. When Emperor Zhu Yuanzhang died, tradition dictated that the throne pass to a son. But he broke with convention, passing it to his grandson, Zhu Yunwen. This controversial decision sparked deep resentment among his sons, the princes. After ascending the throne, the young emperor feared his powerful uncles might one day rebel. So, he decided to reduce the feudatories, a policy to strip his uncles of their military power and centralize his own authority. Zhu Di, the 4th prince, watched as his brothers were disarmed, and some even imprisoned. Refusing to be next, he began an Oscar-worthy performance to save his own life. He pretended to be insane. He'd warm himself by a roaring fire in the middle of summer, snatch food from vendors in the street, and act like a common thug. Nothing like a prince. His brilliant acting successfully fooled the imperial court, lulling them into a false sense of security. But in secret, he was building his army, preparing to fight back. At just 14 years old, Zheng He became Zhu Di's personal attendant, responsible for his daily life. But Zhu Di soon realized this boy was extraordinary. Standing nearly 2 meters tall, with a powerful, sturdy build, Zheng He was a natural warrior. So, the prince unconventionally allowed him to receive military training. In 1399, Zhu Di finally made his move. He launched a rebellion. The young Zheng He fought alongside him, proving himself a brilliant military commander. In the pivotal battle of Zhengshunba, he showed exceptional valor, helping an army of 80,000 defeat a court force of 500,000. This decisive victory, against all odds, shifted the balance of power and proved Zheng He his unwavering loyalty and skill to Zhu Di. After nearly 4 years of brutal civil war, in June 1402, Zhu Di's army conquered the Ming capital, Nanjing. The deposed emperor, Zhu Yunwen, disguised himself as a monk and fled. Zhu Di became the 3rd emperor of the Ming dynasty and moved the capital from Nanjing to Beijing. Yes, that's a key reason why Beijing is the capital of China today. After his coronation, the emperor appointed Zheng He, the eunuch who had fought and bled with him, to the highest court position of director of palace servants, a lucrative role overseeing palace construction and supplies. The trust between them was absolute. But even as emperor, Zhu Di couldn't sleep at night. He should have been happy, but he wasn't. Why? Because he knew he had seized power through bloody means, lacking true legitimacy. And the fact that his nephew, the rightful heir, was still alive and missing, left him sitting on pins and needles. He needed a way to cement his authority, to win the mandate of heaven in the eyes of his subjects and history. Like all Chinese emperors, he was obsessed with his historical legacy. His usurpation and the brutal purges of officials who defied him were a sickness in his heart, and he even frequently dreamed of his father blaming him. And so, a bold, almost insane plan began to form in his mind. He would assemble an unprecedented fleet of treasure ships, sail to the known world, and project the dynasty's power, compelling foreign kings to come and pay homage. This, he believed, would solidify his legitimacy and wash away his sins. His actions can be understood from the perspective that if he was number 1 in the world, then whatever he said and did was right. He also had a secondary motive. He suspected his nephew might have fled to Southeast Asia. The fleet could be used to hunt him down, eliminating the last threat to his rule. For this grand mission, he chose his most trusted man, Zheng He. In loyalty, courage, wisdom, and military genius, he was the only candidate. When the emperor announced the plan, the court officials thought he had lost his mind. They fiercely opposed it, arguing it was a colossal waste of resources with no tangible return. Furthermore, placing a eunuch in supreme command violated the sacred tradition that the inner palace must not interfere in politics. But the emperor's will was absolute. He threw the most vocal critics in prison. Under the iron fist of imperial power, the court fell silent. In 1403, the emperor gave the order. The greatest shipbuilding project in human history began in Nanjing. This was an epic undertaking on par with the Great Wall. A cost is no object endeavor, fueled by the will of one man. This is the Longjiang shipyard. At its peak, over 30,000 of the world's best craftsmen, designers, and laborers worked here around the clock. Let's look at the fleet's flagship, the Bao Chuan, or treasure ship. Based on archaeological evidence and historical records, the largest of these were 70 meters long and 15 meters wide. To put that in perspective, Columbus's flagship, the Santa Maria, was only 23 meters long. You could fit 3 Santa Marias end-to-end inside one treasure ship. Its length was comparable to a modern Airbus A380. To build such a sea monster required the finest timber available, giant teak and Nanmu logs, transported from the deep mountains of southwest China, Vietnam, and Thailand. These woods were as hard and corrosion-resistant as modern specialty steel. Finding and transporting a single log, massive enough for the main keel, could take thousands of soldiers and laborers years, carving paths through remote mountain ranges. And yet, they built 60 of these behemoths. But that wasn't all. The entire fleet consisted of over 200 ships, each with a specific purpose. Treasure ships, flagships, designed to showcase the emperor's glory, filled with silks, porcelain, lacquerware, gold, and silver, including custom imperial gift boxes for foreign rulers. Medical ships, staffed with doctors and stocked with herbal medicines. Artisan ships, for on-the-spot repairs. Horse ships, to transport cavalry. Grain ships, loaded with rice, flour, beans, and dried meat. Water ships, carried fresh water and brewing equipment. Warships, bristling with the most advanced cannons and firearms of the day for defense. Look at this fleet's composition. This wasn't an expedition. It was a mobile city on the sea. The cargo alone could stock a department store. And to operate this floating city, 27,000 sailors and soldiers, roughly the combined personnel of 5 modern American aircraft carriers. Emperor Zhu Di was gambling his entire empire's fortune on a single throw of the dice. He was betting on his personal prestige, his empire's reputation, and his place in history. On June 15, 1405, the maritime Titan was ready. Standing on the deck of his flagship, Zheng He gave the order to depart. 200 ships, 27,000 men, the largest ocean-faring fleet in human history, set sail from Nanjing, following the ancient maritime Silk Road, beginning a legendary 28-year saga. Their mission, goodwill or conquest. The world was about to find out. The fleet's first major test came unexpectedly. When they reached the island of Java, part of modern-day Indonesia, a civil war was raging between 2 local kings. Unaware, some of Zheng He's crew went ashore and were mistaken for enemy reinforcements by the Western king's soldiers and killed. Zheng He was furious. Killing an imperial envoy was, by any standard, a grave provocation, an act of war. He ordered his warships to prepare for battle. Imagine the scene. Hundreds of giant warships poised to unleash hell upon the kingdom. The Western king, terrified upon hearing the news, sent an envoy to beg for forgiveness, offering a massive payment in gold. But Zheng He made a decision that stunned everyone. He refused the payment. Instead, following his emperor's directive, he presented both warring kings with lavish gifts of silk, porcelain, and ceremonial robes. The message was clear. The magnanimity of the Celestial Empire is far greater than your transgression. We don't want your money, we want your submission. But when Zheng He encountered true evil, this generosity instantly became a sword. Here, in what is now Palembang, Indonesia, lurked the pirate king, Chen Zuyi. He commanded nearly 100 warships and thousands of ruthless pirates. He was the terror of the seas and frequently raided China's own coast. Zheng He decided to eradicate him. He first sent an offer of surrender. Chen Zuyi pretended to accept, while secretly planning a night raid on the treasure ships. He coveted the mountains of treasure intended for trade and tribute, seeing the score of a lifetime. But the pirate king had fatally underestimated the veteran military strategist. Zheng He saw through the deception and laid a trap. After a fierce night battle, the largest pirate confederation in the world was annihilated. Chen Zuyi himself was captured alive, taken to Beijing, and publicly executed in front of the assembled foreign envoys. With one act of pardon and one act of annihilation, Zheng He set the tone for all future voyages. Those who submit will prosper. Those who resist will perish. The emperor was immensely pleased and quickly approved the next voyage. On subsequent voyages, Zheng He skillfully wielded the dual instruments of wealth and force to build a new maritime order. The Strait of Malacca is the vital artery connecting the Indian and Pacific Oceans. In the 15th century, however, Malacca was a small fishing village, constantly bullied by its powerful neighbor Siam. Zheng He saw its strategic value. Instead of pointing cannons at the chief's hut, he brought the emperor's favor: a heavy, pure silver seal of office, a magnificent robe embroidered with gold thread, and enough silk and porcelain to awe the entire tribe. Zheng He officially recognized the local chieftain as a king, erecting a stone tablet declaring Malacca a protectorate of the Ming dynasty. With a simple gift, he had, without firing a shot, cultivated a loyal strategic ally. However, on his third voyage, Zheng He faced his most dangerous challenge yet. His opponent wasn't a pirate, but the entire army of a nation. When the fleet sailed to Sri Lanka, the king of Ceylon, Alakeshwara, saw the vast treasures on Zheng He's ships, intended for gifts and trade, and was blinded by greed. He devised a treacherous plan to lure Zheng He into the city, then ambush the fleet at the harbor with his 50,000-strong army. Trapped in the enemy capital, Zheng He made an audacious tactical decision. With the enemy army at the port, the royal palace must be unguarded. He personally led his detachment of just 2,000 soldiers in a lightning raid on the palace. The king, still dreaming of his stolen riches, was captured in his own throne room. When the 50,000 soldiers heard their capital had fallen, they rushed back, only to find their captured king and a well-rested, elite Ming force waiting for them. The massive army had no choice but to lay down its arms. This battle sent a clear message across the Indian Ocean. You can be given the gifts of the Ming dynasty, but you can never take them. From that day on, no nation dared to challenge the treasure fleet. In the following decade, military conflicts became rare. Zheng He's reputation preceded him. His mission shifted to consolidating the tribute system and extending Chinese influence even further. Trade and gifting became the primary activities. The fleet reached unprecedented destinations: the Arabian Peninsula and the east coast of Africa. Here, Zheng He's fleet was a floating superstore. They brought China's finest blue and white porcelain, dazzling silk brocades, intricate lacquerware, and vast quantities of copper coins. In return, they received spices, pepper, precious gems, medicines, and exotic animals. But this was not an equal exchange. The value of the gifts bestowed by the Ming often exceeded the value of the tribute by dozens, even hundreds of times. From a purely commercial standpoint, it was a money-losing enterprise. But Emperor Zhu Di didn't want profit. He wanted a political statement. China is immensely wealthy. Submit to me, and you will share in this endless bounty. It was through this cost-is-no-object diplomacy that Zheng He acquired a gift from the African coast that would delight the emperor beyond measure. Can you guess what it was? That's right, a giraffe. It was presented as a qilin, a mythical creature from ancient Chinese legends, akin to a unicorn, whose appearance signified a sage and righteous ruler. For Emperor Zhu Di, this was not just a strange animal. It was seen as the ultimate endorsement from heaven, validating his rule. While it may sound absurd to treat a giraffe, an animal now common in zoos, as a divine being, its significance was immense. In the end, it proved to be much more practical than the emperor's new clothes. This heavenly sign gave Zhu Di the legitimacy he craved, and his prestige reached its zenith. On August 12, 1424, Emperor Zhu Di, the great Yongle Emperor, the only prince in Chinese history to successfully usurp the throne, and the only emperor to champion sea power so fiercely, died. Zheng He was devastated. The emperor who had made him, understood him, and supported him, was gone. No one else truly understood his mission. In the eyes of the court officials, Zheng He was a wasteful prodigal son, bankrupting the nation. Some even called him a traitor. The voyages were immediately halted. But in 1430, the situation changed. The fifth Ming emperor, Zhu Di's grandson, decided to revive his grandfather's maritime strategy to boost trade and reinforce the tribute system. Now over 60 years old, the veteran admiral put on his armor one last time. On this final voyage, he acted more as an arbiter, once again mediating a dispute between Siam and Malacca. He then sailed west, reaching as far as modern-day Tanzania on the southern part of Africa's east coast. Unbeknownst to Zheng He, at this very time, the Portuguese explorer Gil Anus was sailing down the west coast of Africa. In 1434, he would reach Cape Bojador. Had Zheng He's fleet rounded the Cape of Good Hope, they might have met. It would have been a moment that rewrote human history. But it was not to be. Zheng He was old and frail. His life was drawing to a close. The fleet turned back from Tanzania, but tragically, Zheng He would never return to China to report to his emperor. He closed his eyes for the last time in the Indian Ocean. 28 years. 7 voyages. Over 100,000 kilometers sailed. Zheng He had dedicated his life to fulfilling his emperor's vision, transforming a chaotic ocean into a relatively peaceful, China-centric world order. This was the maritime legend created by one man, 600 years ago. However, Zheng He's death was more than the fall of a nautical titan. It was a symbol of the tragic curtain fall on an entire era of ocean exploration. Back in the Chinese imperial court, the political landscape was unrecognizable. His staunchest supporter, the Yongle emperor, was long dead. The scholar officials in the court, the faction that had opposed the voyages from the very beginning, finally had the upper hand. They argued relentlessly to the new emperor. The voyages are a drain on the treasury. They bring no practical benefit. Our true threat is the Mongols to the north. We must focus our resources on the Great Wall, not on showing off at sea. Ultimately, the emperor was convinced. He issued an edict. The voyages were to be terminated, forever. What happened next is a tragedy. To ensure the policy could never be reversed, the court ordered the destruction of the treasure ship's construction blueprints and most of the priceless nautical charts and logs. The invaluable data, bought with 28 years of blood and sweat by Zheng He and his 27,000 men, was turned to ash. The once mighty fleet was dismantled or left to rot in the harbors. A civilization had personally severed the arms it had extended to the sea, turning its back on the world. From this point on, China chose a policy of isolationism. This closed-door policy led to China losing its connection to the rest of the world. And so, nearly 400 years later, when Great Britain, the first nation to industrialize, arrived with ironclad warships and powerful cannons, they shattered the still agrarian, still complacent Chinese empire that believed itself to be the center of the universe. China was brutally awakened. The sleeping dragon, after centuries of slumber, was forced to reconnect with the world and eventually reawaken. So, let's return to our original question. Why didn't this powerful Chinese fleet establish colonies? By now, you probably have your own theories, and I'd love to hear how you see Emperor Zhu Di's maritime strategy and what you think of Zheng He himself. Let me know in the comments. It's a fascinating topic, and if you love stories like this, make sure you subscribe, because I'll be uncovering more of China's incredible, untold secrets every week. Alright, now for my take on this. I believe it all comes down to a few deep-seated differences that sent the East and West down completely different paths. First, a fundamental difference in motivation. Zheng He's mission was to establish a tribute system. This was, in essence, a China-centric international order. The goal was face and symbolic submission, not land and resources. In these exchanges, a foreign king would present local products as tribute, and the Ming emperor would gift back gold, silk, and porcelain, worth dozens, or even hundreds of times more. To the Ming, this was a necessary expense to display the magnanimity of the Celestial Empire. To the more pragmatic Europeans, this was insanity. Who does business at a loss? Contrast this with Columbus, whose contract with the Spanish Queen explicitly granted him 10% of all wealth discovered. His was a commercially driven venture capital enterprise, seeking tangible economic returns. The Chinese emperor's goal was the exact opposite. Second, a difference in worldview. The Chinese saw themselves as the center of the world, the Middle Kingdom. There was no place better than China, so there was no incentive to occupy foreign lands. This is why Zheng He's voyages followed known trade routes, to patrol a world that was already familiar. Columbus, on the other hand, sailed across a completely unknown ocean on a do-or-die mission, and ended up hitting the jackpot, the Americas. Third, agrarianism versus mercantilism. The Ming dynasty was the wealthiest agrarian empire in the world. largely self-sufficient. Foreign trade was seen as a high-risk, low-reward side hustle. Europe, on the other hand, was resource-poor. The desperate craving for spices and gold forced them to expand outward to survive. Ironically, Spain would later plunder vast amounts of silver from the Americas, only to spend it buying Chinese silk and porcelain. This created a bizarre global trade triangle that only reinforced the Ming belief. Our stuff is the best. Everyone wants it. So why would we need to go out and take theirs? Fourth, and I believe most importantly, the Confucian mindset. Wherever Zheng He went, he would often erect a stone tablet with the inscription, "To share in the blessings of great peace." This reflects the core Confucian value that harmony is most precious. European explorers, driven by the pursuit of capital, would land on a new shore and immediately begin plundering anything of value. When China tried to ban the British from importing opium in the 19th century, Britain launched the Opium Wars. Everything served the interest of capital. That's my perspective. I find the story of Zheng He to be incredibly inspiring, leaving us with endless speculation. Some lament the end of the voyages, believing world history would be completely different if China had remained a sea power. Perhaps the Industrial Revolution would have happened first in China. Perhaps there would have been no century of humiliation. Perhaps the Americas would have been brought into a Chinese-led world order. Others argue this story demonstrates the wisdom of Chinese civilization, a power that did not seek conquest, a restraint that understood when to stop. Perhaps this is a more advanced form of civilization. History has no what-ifs. But 600 years later, when we look back at that invincible fleet that once ruled the oceans, it acts as a mirror, reflecting an eternal question. What is true strength? To conquer the world, or to conquer oneself? To gain everything, or to know what to let go? Perhaps that is Zheng He's most valuable legacy. What do you think? Was China's choice wise, or was it a colossal mistake that cost them the world? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I release new content every week. See you next time.